Hello and welcome to another installment of Are You Experienced, the podcast all about the business of experiences. In this episode, I'm talking to Brendan Brown, who's Global SVP of Strategy at George P. Johnson, the brand experience agency responsible for some of the most iconic activations and shows in the world of experiential marketing. Given we're well and truly in the world of brand and marketing here, I'm definitely more in my comfort zone, and I think it makes for a really interesting conversation. We cover Brendan's journey from actual rockstar to strategy rockstar, deep dive what makes experiential such a potent marketing channel, and explore how technology should and shouldn't be used in the service of creating experiences that really drive impact. I hope you enjoy it as much as I did. On with the show. Brendan, hello.
Hello.
Welcome to the Are You Experienced podcast, and thank you very much for being here.
Pleasure to be here, Joe. Thanks for having me.
We're going to dig into all aspects of brand experiences today. So I'm really excited about this. I suppose this is probably the area of the experience economy that is closest to my history. I've been interviewing people from the world of theme parks and mega events and all this kind of stuff, which is totally alien to me. So I'm hoping that this will be a little bit of a bridge to my old life, and that we can kind of have a conversation where I add a bit more value than I usually do on these things. So,
well, I'm sure you will. Let's be good.
Yeah, we'll see.
Same for me, by the way. Hopefully, I can add some value to the conversation. So,
I'm sure you will.
See, yeah.
So we'll kick off. Let's start at the very beginning, because you started out actually as a musician. So you were in a band, a very successful band for a long time. So tell us about that.
Yeah. I mean, I think this is a big part of my story. Getting into experiential marketing was a kind of tying back to my youth and the things I first kind of fell in love with as a kid. So I like to say I've been in the experiential industry for over 25 years, and it's not because I'm a really healthy looking 60-year-old. It's because I'm a 40-year-old who started very young. The first way I really made money as a kid was I loved punk music, and I lived in a small town, and there were never any good concerts anywhere near me. So I started going to punk shows, making friends with the other bands, and inviting them to come to my town and hosting punk rock shows in a small town. So I loved that, the feeling of a happening, of being together with people and a shared experience. And so that kind of like love of live moments, live human experience started really, really young for me. That eventually transitioned to me picking up a guitar, starting a band in high school. Then throwing punk shows became a foil for me getting to play with the bands I really liked. And it was like, we'll pay you to come play, and then we'll open for you as a part of the deal. But yeah, it taught me a lot about the basics of our industry and our business. Fell in love with music, started a band, did that for ultimately, the better part of a decade. Played rock and roll music. The band was called The Receiving End of Sirens. It was well before I knew anything about marketing. Would have picked a shorter name. But there's a lot of, it's taken me time, and I'm still learning, but a lot of similarities between what I used to do and what I do now, even though on maybe the surface they seem widely different.
Yeah, I think that's really interesting that one can kind of carry over into the other. And I suppose also the kind of music as well, like you say, when it comes to punk, that has like its own sort of DNA, its own spirit, its own kind of like ethos, right? So have you sort of taken that? Is that still part of your approach to your work?
I would say there's a general scrappiness, resourcefulness, roll up your sleeves and just make happen. That has been useful for me in my career. A lot of that was you have no resource at your it's just whatever is available to you within your environment, and you're trying to make that work. And so I think coming from an ethic like that certainly helps in an environment where you're trying to build something new or start something new. I would say that's definitely a big piece of it. It's funny. after my music career, I was in my mid-20s and trying to find a bit more stability. And I would say like for the first decade of my career on the agency side, it was almost like I was trying to be a different person. I was like, well, that's my past. Now I'm really focused on marketing and brands and the agency side of my career. And it wasn't until a little later, maybe in my 30s, where I started to recognize, a lot of those skills that I picked up or things that I learned could be really useful and unique for me in a more corporate or agency like environment. I think the biggest one, so now I lead a global strategy practice. And really, strategy is pretty pointless alone. A lot of what we do has to happen with our creative partners and our production partners and our account partners. In a sense, getting to a really good concept, getting to a really good idea is a lot like jamming and writing music with people. It's writing together. And so the group dynamics of how do you get to a state, set the right preconditions for a team to jam and create. And a lot of that stuff, I find myself kind of calling back on my previous experience as a songwriter and musician for how do we do a similar thing in this arena.
That's awesome. I love that. Yeah, I saw it on your LinkedIn. You talk about this idea of making music with ideas, and I thought that really resonated. I love that.
Yeah.
Also, I didn't see on your LinkedIn the name of your band until much later into my research, and I was looking online to find Brendan Brown music and realized that the lead singer of Wheatus.
Teenage
exactly
Dirtbag. Yeah, that's right.
So I kept going, no way, and then realized that no,
definitely not Wheatus Teenage Dirtbag. That's funny.
But yeah, so super interesting. So okay, so you've kind of brought all of that influence and all of that kind of DNA, like I say, through into your current work, as you say. For people who haven't heard of GPJ or George P. Johnson, give us a bit of an explanation about the work that you do as a company and obviously your role there as SVP Strategy.
Yeah, so we are the world's leading strategic experience marketing agency. We like to say we're in the business of goosebumps. We create, memories, emotions, experiences that connect brands and people in ways that really break through. And I think especially in today's media environment, there's nothing like a live human experience. What I love about where I work, we've been around for 111 years, started off right outside Detroit, Michigan, making sails. So it's a sail making company for sail ships that were crossing across the Great Lakes. Eventually,
sails as in wind sails. I was like, set out making sails, like selling cars. I thought you meant outside Detroit.
World War I happened. We turned that into a flag making and bunting making business, which really took off. Wow. And from there, helped launch the first car shows. So that the roots of us as an events or experiential agency are over 100 years old. And so to kind of step into a lineage or a history like that and to recognize kind of all the growth that's happened, the starting the whole auto industry, the telecom industry, the internet, and now where we are today, we're throwing some of the biggest, most, I'd like to say, important and influential moments for a lot of big B2B tech brands. So IBM, Google, Workday, Cisco, Salesforce, Figma, Twitch, a whole bunch. Do a lot of work in the auto industry, right? So, launches, ride and drives, press reveals, auto shows, and more and more on the sports, gaming, and entertainment side of our business. So making a big move into sports. Can't talk about. We just won a couple really significant pieces of business in the sports world, which will be coming out soon, I'm sure. Really exciting. Doing a lot of work with Pokemon right now on their tournaments around the world. So really, exciting time to be at GPJ and quite a responsibility. If I think about the history of the place I work, and I like to think maybe 100 years from now, what we're doing today will seem as different as sail making feels to us now. Quickly
then, this feels like this is just, I find this sort of thing fascinating. A company that's been around for that long. What is the ownership structure these days of that? Is it still like a
Employee
owned by
owned.
the Johnson family or employee owned? Right.
We're an ESOP company. So we all have everyone has a stake in the business.
Yeah.
So if we do well, it's good for all of us. If we don't do well, it's not good for all of us, which, it's funny, the relationship between structure and culture and how those things relate. So when you create a place where there literally is stake, everyone's got skin in the game, it is different working at a place like that.
Yeah, 100%. I think the reason I asked that was I thought that was probably going to be the answer. And I find that just anecdotally, it seems like a lot of companies with real staying power and that can sort of shape shift like that over time tend to be employee owned entities.
Yeah.
Because the incentives are just all differently, but brilliantly aligned, right? It's kind of like, it's fascinating. And how many people?
It's a good question. It's somewhere between 1,500 and 2,500, depending on how you count and who you count.
Yeah.
But all around the world, and a part of Project Worldwide, which is a holding company unlike any other. Actually, George P. Johnson, we started the holding company and right after the financial crisis in 2007, 2008 as a way to diversify the business. And so now a whole bunch of the work we do today is in partnership with other alliance partners within our holding company. So really exciting.
Very cool. Very cool. So your role then as head of strategy globally, talk us through that then, because strategy is very all-encompassing umbrella word in a lot of businesses, and even from within agencies. So where does strategy kind of begin and end in the context of experiences?
Yeah, it's a good question. I would say when I started in the business, there was much more of a mentality that there was a beginning and an end. Like this was a waterfall type process where, okay, strategy has the strategy part, you brief, give it to the creative team, back out, what's the next project, brief them, get them to and maybe you're doing some reporting at the end. We don't work that way at all anymore. And in reality, many of our clients we've been with for 20, 30, some of them up over 70 years at this point.
Wow.
So our process is much less like a line or like a waterfall and much more like a circle that's kind of continually evolving and developing over time. So I see strategy as being a through line that our beginning is also the end of a project. There really isn't that being said, it's not just, we're not just always involved in everything. There are, it's important to have clarity within an agency, or else you have less of a playing field and more of a minefield between teams. So there are some clear roles and responsibilities. So I view our job largely at the beginning of if we're looking at just a one-off project. At the beginning, it's largely in partnership with the client and the account team, where we're helping to intake what the client is looking for. What's the challenge? What's the problem? What does success look like for them? In partnering with that team, just to make sure we've got the general outline in shape of what the problem is, what the opportunity is. And how are we measuring the success of that? From there, our job is to take the client's input and mix it with outside perspective, our expertise and experience within the industry, and frame that problem in a way that will excite our creative team in the right direction. That's the way I like to think. An invitation to our creative team to join in and help solve that problem in a way that hasn't been thought of before, or to connect new dots. So a lot of the work of a strategy team is really, how do you find that interesting truth or angle that is going to, it's kind of like, those aha moments, or those little reframes, or you twist the screw one other way and you're like, oh, fuck, that's true. That's different. So a lot of the work is then in the working with the creative team to want to excite them in the right direction. And then as we're getting ideas back, we're kind of tuning and shaping the ideas together to ensure that they're matching the need and solving the problem. And then a lot of times it's like once we've gotten somewhere really strong, the role of a strategist is also to help defend the idea. Sometimes you could have a creative partner who's got a really great concept, but the strategist is there to speak to the client in a way where we know we can sell that idea to them, we can rationalize it or prove it or shape it in a way that's going to get pushed through and allow the creative to stay creative. And then a lot of our work, once we're, through, we've sold and we've built the thing, our team is out there auditing events, often either from a competitive standpoint or from a learning standpoint. We built this, how can we learn from it? And then on the follow-on to the end of a program, we're doing the after action report. We're doing a bit of a hot wash with the team to, okay, what can we learn from this? How can we, often that's where we're turning our conversation as opposed to a recap to being let's look into the future.
Yeah.
How can we take some of these learnings and make some bets into the future around what do we want to leave behind in the past? What do we want to take with us? Where do we want to invest? And that sort of strategic conversation, being a growth partner with our clients, really shifts that relationship. So yeah, I would say we are a through line. We might be primary or secondary or singing harmony in some of the parts, but yeah, we don't really duck out or go away.
Yeah. I love that idea of kind of almost the custodian of the sort of the learnings, right? So it's sort of anything that happens is a kind of a learning opportunity, and you can focus that through the rest of that relationship with that client, but also presumably that you get collective learnings that influence other work.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, that's one of our, when I think about my role now as leading a global practice, one of the biggest advantages we have really is the scale and the amount of like boots on the ground. The amount of ground truth we're able to pull out from across markets. So we've got, we're at thousands and thousands of events every year. And so the amount of intelligence that we can pull from those experiences when we connect them as a global group, that level of not just information, but potential for intelligence or even insight, wisdom development as a group really, really excites me. And one of the few things I think is exciting about where we're at with technology these days.
It's connecting those dots, you mean? So connecting those insights that would it otherwise sort of sit in PowerPoint decks and people's drawers and things like that?
Yeah, sit in isolation, or it's, the amount of data you're able to hold as a strategist. You might have seen the most recent 5 audits and you're thinking about what it means at a scale like this size. Whereas if we've got thousands of audits, it's far too much for me to hold or synthesize or distill on my own, but the ability to look across and make connections that are just kind of, computationally impossible for the human brain. That's exciting for me. So looking, and it's also like research no one would commission because it doesn't make sense for an individual to spend that much time to do research to look across industries, across regions, across super wide data set in order to come to you with a finite. Client's going to look for a very specific research task where we can scope it. And so you're very much focused on versus what if you had the ability to look super broad without it taking a massive amount of time and budget. So there's just so much unexplored potential connections in there that we just haven't really had the opportunity to dig into before.
And it's a completely unique data set, right? So that's a real competitive advantage for you guys, is that you have all of that data. Presumably you can kind of look back historically as well on stuff you've done previously. And that maybe not all of the 110-year history or whatever, but that becomes unspoofable, right? You've got this kind of historic longitudinal data set that you can kind of extrapolate into the future or whatever. So I'm getting excited thinking about that.
It's a big challenge, and the technology's there. It's also it's just a massive coordination issue, right? You got people all over the place with their own patterns, and so we've spent quite a few years now, and we've finally got our organization working in a coordinated manner, centralizing and bringing our data together to unlock new insight is one of the things I'm really excited about, and also, where we're investing quite a bit as a business.
Very cool. So you mentioned about kind of setting goals and, you know, the sort of metrics, if you like, that what success looks like for these events. And I want to kind of get on to talking about specifically around brand building, but what is the mix? Is it typically brand that is the clients are trying to move, or are you, I mean, I know that you do some kind of like ticketed or sort of commercial events and experiences and things like that. What typically is it that clients are looking to move?
Yeah, it's fun. Is that, coming into a B2B environment, it's now I will say there has been a shift and growing recognition of the potential for brand building to come from experiences, which is so obvious when you think about it as just a human being who's not like working and doing a job. It's like obviously the most memorable, impressive, literally things that have impressed upon you most fully have most likely included multiple senses in a particular place full of emotion. And so we know that, like, at a human level, experiences are the most, your ability to impress the most, a live experience on a human being. And in the B2B space, events are typically created for a business reason. They're trying to get more meetings with the right people to accelerate pipeline. They're trying to increase revenue, drive sales. So there's kind of baked into the origin of many B2B events is a really almost maniacal business focus. And so a lot of the, that I don't want to go on a tirade here, but as the broad, I guess I think as the broader marketing mix changes, as the internet gets sloppier and spammier and potentially dies, brands and marketers have a real rat's nest that they're trying to figure out right now. And within that, there is a shining light, and I believe that's experiential. And you're seeing, most recent, like IPA Bellwether report, continued to see over-index growth in experiential. And I think the recognition is growing that live experiences is your only real brand asset. And so as that recognition grows, new and different budget will flow into experiential with broader intentions or strategic objectives that go beyond just the business side of it. So as that relates to measurement, I do think measurement is actually one of the ways you can start to change that mindset by, at the beginning of a project or a relationship, having the conversation about what is the impact we're looking to measure. How are we going to prove the value of the thing we're creating? And when you stop just at the business hard metrics, it can be a hard case to prove. But when you start to expand that measurement out beyond the immediate, what happened next week, next month, next quarter, to the longer term brand building effects of an experience, the potential for experiential to be the most impactful and effective channel is certainly there. Anyways, I feel like System 1 recently put out some research that was looking across touch points in a customer journey. What was highest impact, most effective? Events were up there. Gartner just released some research similarly. McKinsey did a whole bunch of research recently where it came out that quality of attention was the most important thing to measure when it came to the differences in marketing touch points, and experiential was top of the list. So growing expert recognition, increasing consumer demand, I think will continue to put more pressure and heavy lifting on experiential, but in that will also come the recognition that it can do a whole lot more than just drive business and transactions. We do have a good handful of clients now who are also measuring brand impact in addition to immediate business impact, and also like some of the attendee behavior stuff. What are the things that we're just looking to increase exposure to certain messages, shift perception around certain ideas. So, yeah, I don't know if I answered your question, but on the B2B side, much more focus on the, if you think about the long and short of it, the short of it.
Yeah.
With our job is the expanding the horizon of how do we attribute impact back to this channel. On the B2C side, a lot of the car stuff we're doing, work in the gaming, there's a greater recognition of that. This isn't just about short term or long term. It's a balance of both. But I think some of the work we're doing in the B2C space can be really influential to the B2B folks who are looking up to what we do in B2C. So
yeah, super interesting. That's brilliant answer. Thanks for the sort of richness of it. I mean, listening to you talk there, that is obviously our business is trying to do this upstream by kind of understanding emotion. We think about, it starts with story and emotion. That's what drives memory, and memory is what drives future behavior. So all of that kind of long-term stuff, lifetime value and things like that, I think is the power of experiences, like you say, is just unique, right? If emotion is what you're looking for, you're not going to get a more emotive media channel than experiences. But I think that you can kind of take that out of just experiential marketing. And I mean, it's kind of already happened in music to a degree. You've got like the live experience now is so prominent compared to kind of recorded music even, right? And that's a total reversal. Obviously there's a lot of things that fed into that, but that kind of driver of fandom, the live experience is so critical to that now, whereas it didn't used to be necessarily.
Yeah. I mean, the economics and the business model behind all of it too, and the relationship between the industry and technology and how it unbundled and rebundled everything.
Yeah.
Similar things happening now.
Exactly. And I think sport is my sort of passion project at the moment, talking about this in terms of the US already do this much better than we do in the UK, but that kind of in-stadium experience there's so much upside there in terms of using that as a fan building, thinking about that, shifting that to that long-term thinking versus short-term thinking. So, if you have a long-term mindset and you're trying to turn the stadium into the Disneyland for Chelsea fans or whatever, it's a totally different mindset, and you create a totally different experience than you do if you've got this sort of extractive short-term mindset in terms of
100%
revenue.
And that's like that. Yeah. What we measure affects what we do. So that conversation at the beginning around the fandom, the community, if those become the conversation, we're trying to measure, how do you move the needle on like love for our brand or commitment to this? Those are softer metrics, a little far harder to wrangle, but I think pretty inarguable, more important, even though they're tougher to measure.
Yeah.
Sports is a great.
Yeah, and it's because it's just important. But sports is so interesting because it is the ultimate short term in terms of like, all that matters is what happens on the game day, right? So it's the ultimate short term thinking in terms of the performance of the team, but there's the performance of the business. It has to kind of have a much longer term view. But yeah, super interesting.
Like the intensity, I forgot who I heard was talking about this, but they talked about our memory and almost, if you imagine our memory running on like cassette tape and being kind of imprinted on tape, the more emotional an experience, it's almost like putting your finger down on the tape. So it's going to impress it even further. So you think about a live sporting environment, the amount of the social dynamic and what that does to your emotions, the story of the game, the deep sense of collective play and like effervescence of a group together. That is a perfect kind of soup for attaching a brand or a moment or a memory to, for something that lasts and endures. So I think that is a huge piece of the brand impression and the ability to build, an empire in the mind of a brand, is connecting into those really meaningful, super emotional, highly salient moments in a person's life. We have a lot of clients who are moving a lot of work into the sports space. I think that's partially from a realizing brand wise it has high potential. It's also, as experience become more and more valuable, those intangible things that money can't buy, from a hospitality and a client relationship prospecting perspective, those sorts of experience has really can't be rivaled. And I think I guess I have a thesis that at the cultural level, we've been so fragmented that I don't know, you're younger than me. I would assume I'm 41, but
I'm
growing up,
41 as well. So
okay, we're roughly the same. Okay, same age, but we kind of came up in an age where there still was kind of a macro culture.
yeah.
There were big and now it's everything's been so personalized and fragmented or polarized that there are very few kind of experiences that feel unified culturally. I think sport is one of those
100%.
remaining places, and you can see at the human level the impulse, the demand to go
100%.
back. Yeah,
I couldn't agree more. I wrote a thing on LinkedIn actually not long ago saying exactly that this sort of demise of the monoculture that, I mean, in the UK, we had 4 TV channels growing when I was growing up.
Yeah.
So it's TV, if it was on TV, everybody saw it, right? It was kind of
and it's all BBC, right?
Yeah.
Is that the
People still know all of these kind of sitcoms that you had sort of in the UK. You had 50 million people watching a show, which is maybe not quite that high, but it's crazy the numbers in terms of percentage reach of some of these cultural moments. But now, like you say, with the fragmentation, a stadium of 100,000 people, or maybe in the UK be slightly smaller, but that's a mid-sized reach figure for some sort of TV shows these days.
Right.
It's not it's not crazy to sort of think of these as big cultural moments.
Agree.
Good. I want to kind of talk about a bit more of that sort of punk spirit, I suppose, and this idea of, particularly in that kind of B2B spaces. You mentioned about experiential being about multi-sensory, emotive, the no creative walls, really, right? You can kind of, there's no format you have to fit or anything like that. So how do you, when brands are a little bit more conservative, how do you go about as a strategist and with the creative team as a partner, how do you go about trying to convince brands to become braver and blow things out of the water a bit more creatively?
Yeah. It's an age-old question. And I think anyone who says there's one silver bullet for how you do that is just lying. It's not the case. It's not been my experience. But my experience has been and one of the things I love about working at an agency, and maybe this is just part of being a strategist and being generally curious, is that I get the chance to work across so many different organizations and industries and see inside how they work and make decisions and what motivates them, how they're incentivized. All of those things play a tremendous part in how a company makes decisions, where they're going to invest and how they're going to invest. So the how precisely you convince a client to do something that is, I guess, creatively risky, it's really going to depend on the client and their culture and the way they make decisions and what the fears are, what the incentives are, and what the motivations are. So, quick crash course on that. Harvard Business School has a great five decision maker types, 5 different ways of decision making and the ways in which to convince, persuade, or influence those people. So I would say, going back to even Dale Carnegie, there are some. You need to understand your decision maker. You need to understand what's important to them and frame the risk in a way that is the upside is the same upside they're looking for. I do think there is a lot of talk about, wanting to take creative risk. And I sometimes wonder if that's even the right way to frame it. Like, we don't really we're in a time where clients are being asked to do more with less. There's lots of scrutiny on marketing budgets. And so to go in and as an agency and let's be risky, let's do some risky stuff is kind of well, okay. It's got to have a strong rationale. It should be rooted in some sort of insight, and you need to, just because it's a risk doesn't mean you shouldn't be able to have a hypothesis around how this is going to work. And I think that's that's maybe the key across all clients is it's the shift from kind of we're trying to get something perfect or right, and there's this big risk, and if we get it right, it's going to be a big win. If we get it wrong, we're really screwed. To one that's more of less of a risk and more of an uncertainty. There's this uncertainty here that has the potential to have some upside to it, and we want to treat this as a learning opportunity, which means if we do it, it's not a loss because we learned, okay, well, that didn't work, and here are the things we can extract from it. And the next time, so I think the closer, the longer you have a relationship with a client, the more you have that ability to let's actually proactively look for some highly impactful uncertainties that could be more of a feature than a bug for our planning process, and use those as opposed to creative risks, uncertainties we want to learn about. I think we could keep talking about this topic, but I feel like part of it is the framing of risk and uncertainty. A big piece of it's understanding the client and their culture. And then, it's not always necessary to take creative risks, but if the client's coming to you with a big problem and they've got a big goal or a bet that they're going after, that is going to require some risk taking in order to achieve it. So that's kind of if you got a client who's last year was great, we want to do the same thing this year, and, don't fix it. Well, it's not, maybe you don't need to be going in with huge creative risks. It's working. That's what they're looking for. And that's not the state. But if you've got a client who's struggling or they have big ambitions, then it's a more imperative conversation.
Yeah. I love the idea of reframing risk. And there's also different types of creative risk, right? There's the ones to avoid are where the downside risk is that you're going to damage the brand in some way, or you're going to
how risky.
Whereas the risk is we could spend some money on it and it doesn't work. But if it does, it's going to really drive that emotional reaction that is going to create a memory and ultimately drive our long-term value. Then that's a different kind of risk, right? It's like there's, and like you say, if you can then reframe that as a learning opportunity, we've what's the Edison quote of I found 1,000 ways not to make a light bulb before
that's right.
I found the one that do it.
That's it. But that whole little behavior change with a client, if you can get them to start running those tiny experiments, that can be a gateway drug to bigger creative risks. If you can kind of, let's not just pick one, let's pick 5 little experiments to run. Let's see how these go. That could be a way of easing a client who's typically unwilling to engage in that kind of dialogue. There could be a way of using this as an opportunity to learn, and then you're, increasing the tolerance for risk from there.
Yeah, very interesting. Like you say, we could carry on talking about this for a long time, I think.
Yeah. But some clients are also maybe it's just like a guy with a huge ego. And it's look what your competitor did. If you don't do this, so sometimes it's much more basic.
Yeah. And so play the person and
and
reframe.
Sure. And prior to that, have the attendee or participant and the brand's best interest in mind.
Yeah.
So
and ground it, like you say, ground it all in rigor and insight, not just, there's no, it's only risky if it's just kind of a finger in the air type thing. Right?
Yes. Yeah.
Very good. So I don't want this to be an AI question, but I feel like it might be. It might be an AI question. So obviously it feels like a kind of golden era we've already talked about the importance of experience in a world of fragmentation of media and kind of AI slop and all this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But what I loved from our conversation, not for the podcast, but the conversation we had before this, was talking about your creative technology team and the kind of how you guys think about using technology in the creative process. So I suppose we can't ignore AI in that, but what do you think is the sort of biggest opportunity in terms of this sort of golden era of engagement technology that's out there for experiences? What's the biggest opportunity out there that maybe people aren't cottoning onto yet?
Maybe like deeply human stuff. That'd probably be my with all the technology around. I feel like one of the most successful sales activations we did last year was we had salespeople take clients and prospects on a walk around the city. And the amount of conversation and dialogue that came out of the amount of deals that closed as a result of that, as opposed to putting them in a room full of LED lights and touch screens and like demo peds. So I feel like maybe one of the biggest, technologies we ever made was like the fire and sitting around a fire and having conversation. And I feel like that's, the analog intelligence is maybe more exciting in the context of an experience, because you took time out of your day, or your week, and spent money to fly somewhere different or go somewhere new. And like, for me, there's almost I get angry if someone's putting a computer screen in front of my face. You're like, oh my God, like I finally escaped the internet. I'm back in real life. Let's do some real life stuff, people. And so I feel like that's, maybe an evasive answer to your question.
No, it's not.
Technology.
I think I think that's really interesting. It's not, ignore technology. Technology has to be used to play to the strengths of experiences, which is ultimately about human connection and bringing people together.
Yes.
And I suppose the follow-up question on the other side of that coin is, so the trap there is that you are using technology, in and of itself, or you're using technology because you can or because it's there, not to enhance that kind of human experience.
And it's like, we already have the demo on our website, so just put the website, and it's like, well, you could just go on the website from like the train or the toilet or your office. So like, why do a thing you can do better at home or anywhere else but here? So I think technology does get in the way a lot. That being said, there have been some instances, I think, where it is that like over quoted quote about it being, the best technology is indistinguishable from magic. And, that whole, the invisible layer of it being able to connect and surface and capture content for you. I think there's a lot of really interesting stuff that's happening around understanding an attendee beforehand and what they're looking for and their needs, and being able to make recommendations around agendas and package content you might have missed, and all that kind of stuff. I think there's a lot of interesting things happening in that regard.
I think that's really interesting. It's so true. I used to work for a company called GWI, or a big global audience data company. They weren't big when I was there. I was employee number 10, so I was there very early. Yeah.
Wow.
Thinking back now, we used to do a lot of it was a big data set, big taxonomy that was kind of, we structured into this sort of graphic. And the by far the most engagement that we used to get at trade shows was when we'd have a whole wall of the stand was just the taxonomy, all of the data that we had. And people would like dwell looking through that for like a long time, which kind of just fed all of these questions. And you could, rather than having a demo going on the screen, you could literally walk people through this wall of data and all that kind of thing.
It's really cool. Yeah.
That's just printing,
Well, that's like I was just out at Dreamforce, which was one of my favorite events we do. And what was captivating for me was watching, we did build all these amazing, really spectacular tech-driven activations, which were great. But where there was like true frenzy was in the spaces where we created learning zones where you can meet with other experts, other people in your field who are building similar things. I mean, other humans are a great technology as well.
Mm,
Like
mm,
all of the our ability to learn and tell stories and share learnings as a culture and together as people. It's kind of our niche, right? As
mm,
humans. So yeah, when times are crazy or highly opportunistic or really, really hard, we've always gotten together in groups and discussed and tried to untangle these sorts of knots or figure things out together. And I think that's the real craving at the bottom of why people come to experiences
mm,
to begin with, is to be with others, to share a place and time and to learn from one another. And technology can allow that to emerge when used properly and wisely, and it can really get in the way if you don't.
mm, mm. Again, another topic you could kind of talk about for a long time, but it gets into a lot more
Yeah,
broad reflections on humanity and
the
and
next
the
episode.
future.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Cool. So I'm hopeful that this podcast is going to be listened to by people, kind of young people starting out in the industry. One of the reasons I'm excited to be building in the experiential, the IRL sort of industries, is because of the opportunities that it will still have for young people to kind of get a start in
Yeah,
businesses where that
yeah.
a lot of those roles are disappearing with AI and things like that. So if you were if they are listening to this and you had to advise somebody just starting out in the world of brand experiences, what would that advice be?
Wow. Yeah, good question.
Or just the world of experiences in general?
Yeah, I mean, don't use AI too much. That would be honestly, one of the things I worry about most is that next generation. And, it's something we're being really thoughtful about is how and where to use AI to be useful and to accelerate you in a way that's sustainable or that can endure. I worry there are many ways we are cutting to the quick and losing out in the process that gets us there. So, I would be really cautious about how much thinking and writing you let it do for you and what that might amputate in the future for you if you don't. Um, I
And
think
also the kind of the corners you might paint yourself into with
exactly
the
right. Yeah, you're just in a box. Yeah,
yeah
you can
I
manage the agent.
yeah
Yeah,
and just the it's incredibly convincing AI, right?
yeah,
So
yeah,
if you are someone early in your career who doesn't have a ton of experience, it's really hard to call bullshit on AI
for sure.
when a lot of the time that's what you have to do.
Yeah, yeah,
And it might get, you might get something interesting from it, but that's not what you end up
right.
using, because from experience that
From experience. Yeah,
actually that's not great. So it's that tension between, okay, how do we keep those pathways open for young people to get experience so that they can use AI as a force multiplier?
so I think that would be like part of that is that um, it would be the being thoughtful and having some boundaries around how and where you use it and what sorts of things you want to hand over to it and let it do for you versus what you want. Because I do think that is, part of writing is thinking and how you think and how you write and how you communicate. Those things are generalized across all sorts of other parts of your life and important skills. And maybe that will be a matter of remaining proactively curious. Pretty much everything that an LLM is telling you has already happened and is available information somewhere else. So finding your own sources, doing your own reading, not to sound like an old person, but like read, be curious, continue to like curate and find your sources of inspiration. And I feel like your ability to curate better sources is an advantage. So being curious and finding the right
Mm.
sources and finding taste around that. And then I think like if you're working in experiential, recognizing that like your body is an instrument. It is a way of understanding how people receive and perceive the world. So that's not to get too woo-woo, but some of the stuff we even do with our own team is around embodied cognition exercises around how you perceive and sense and feel the world. Having a better, an LLM will never receive an experience through the same sense perception you have as a human being. And so our own ability for love and grief and memory and smell and taste and touch and all of that, I think almost like honoring that more and recognizing your own experience as a conduit into understanding how others might perceive the world as well. So yeah, make yourself un-LLMable. Yeah.
Stay human, folks.
Yeah, that's
right. Amazing. So the last question I always ask everybody is, who should I interview next, and what should I ask them about?
Ooh, that's a good one. Well, the first one that came to mind would be James Wallman. He started the WXO. Do you know him? He's in London.
I did. I think we're connected actually on LinkedIn. So, but I will follow up and chat. I haven't met James, but I see him pop up on LinkedIn a lot.
I'll give you an introduction. I can introduce you to James.
Great.
What would you could literally ask him anything. Yeah. What is the relationship between time and experience design? Let's see what he has to say about that.
Okay.
Talk to him about, time.
Time. Okay. Yeah. I love that. That's the Joe Pine phrase of the design. Oh no, it's not Joe Pine actually. I think he quotes it in his book about the design of time. Experiences is the design of time.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. And James talks about it like a time sculpting, I think is the way he talks about it, which I really like. Joe Pine would be another good one. He's got his book coming out.
Yeah.
The Transformation Economy. I don't know if you follow along with Joe, but yeah.
I do.
Yeah.
Hopeful. I've got a tentative acceptance from Joe to join the podcast later in the seasons.
Yeah, nice.
So hopefully that goes ahead.
Yeah, right on.
Awesome. Well, look, Brendan, thank you so much for doing this. It's been a really, really enjoyable conversation. I hope you've enjoyed and got some value out of it as well. But
absolutely.
I'm sure listeners are going to love it. Both of them.
Yeah, all three of them. Yeah. My mom and my wife.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Yeah. But as this hopefully grows and people listen back, this is going to be a really exciting one. So thank you for doing it.
Great. Yeah. Thanks, Joe. Appreciate it.